I thought I was set for a peaceful retirement, but everything changed when I discovered my son had emptied my retirement fund to buy his wife a luxury car. Now, I'm facing homelessness while he's nowhere to be found. Let me know where you're tuning in from. And hit like if you agree that some betrayals feel like a knife to the heart. I woke up that morning feeling the usual calm that comes with retirement. The sunlight filtered softly through the lace curtains of my modest bedroom, casting a gentle glow on the faded wallpaper. For years, I had lived a quiet life, careful and deliberate with my finances, always mindful that my retirement fund was my lifeline. As I shuffled to the kitchen to prepare my morning tea, a small envelope on the table caught my eye. It was from the bank, and something about the way it lay there fell off, like a warning I wasn't ready to hear. With a trembling hand, I tore open the envelope and pulled out a statement that made my stomach sink. My bank account was empty. Every last cent of my retirement fund, the sum I had painstakingly saved for decades, was gone. The notice inside explained that my retirement fund had been liquidated. I blinked, rereading the words as if the paper might lie to me. But the numbers didn't lie. The balance was zero. My savings, my security, vanished overnight. My heart pounded as I reached for the phone to call the bank. The customer service representative's voice was calm, professional, but utterly devoid of empathy. She confirmed the liquidation had been authorized and the funds withdrawn. When I asked who had requested the transfer, there was a pause. Then she read out a name that made me freeze in disbelief. Daniel. My son, Daniel. My own flesh and blood had drained my account without a word. The shock was paralyzing. How could he? I thought back over the years, all the sacrifices I had made to support him through school, to give him a good start in life. And now, here he was emptying the very account that was supposed to see me through my twilight years. I grabbed my coat and keys, my mind racing. I needed to see for myself what had happened to the money. Driving to Daniel's house, my hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. The streets blurred past, but my thoughts were clear. Betrayal, disbelief, and a deep, aching sadness. When I pulled into his driveway, there it was, a brand new Mercedes, gleaming under the morning sun. The kind of car I had never dreamed of owning, but one that now felt like a cruel monument to my loss. It was the physical proof of Daniel's betrayal, parked just steps away from the front door. I rang the doorbell, my heart pounding in my ears. No answer. I tried again, louder this time, but still nothing. The silence inside the house was deafening. I looked through the windows and saw signs of recent activity. Clothes tossed on the sofa, dishes in the sink, but no sign of him. My son was gone. The weight of abandonment settled on me like a heavy shroud. Not only had Daniel stolen from me, but he had vanished, leaving me alone with the ruins of my trust. I sat on the porch steps, the morning sun warming my face, but unable to thaw the cold betrayal in my chest. I called his phone. It rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. I left a message, my voice barely steady, asking him to call me back. But I knew, deep down, that this was not a simple mistake or misunderstanding. This was deliberate, a calculated act that shattered the foundation of our relationship. As I drove home that day, the streets seemed unfamiliar, the world a little colder. My modest apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage built from broken promises. I sat down at the kitchen table, the bank statement before me, and felt the tears come unbidden. Daniel had taken not just my money, but my peace of mind. The betrayal cut deeper than any financial loss. It was the knowledge that my own son, the boy I had brought into this world and raised with love, could do this to me. I thought about the years ahead, the uncertainty that now loomed large. How would I manage without that money? How would I face the days knowing that my own flesh and blood had abandoned me so completely? That night, sleep eluded me. My mind replayed every conversation, every shared moment with Daniel, searching for clues I had missed. Was there a sign? A cry for help? Or had I simply been blind to the man he had become? The questions circled endlessly, each one a fresh wound. I resolved then to find him, to confront the son who had betrayed me, and to understand why. But beneath that determination was a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, there was an explanation that could mend the broken pieces. I clung to that hope as I stared at the empty bank statement, a stark reminder that the life I had planned was now forever altered. In the days that followed, I contacted the bank again, requesting all the details of the transactions, hoping to trace the money. I spoke to a lawyer to understand my rights, to see if there was any way to reverse the damage. But each conversation only confirmed the harsh reality. The money was gone, spent, and Daniel was nowhere to be found. Friends and neighbors offered sympathy, but their words felt hollow. They didn't understand the depth of my sorrow, the complexity of being betrayed by family. I felt isolated, trapped in a nightmare where the person I trusted most had become my greatest threat. Yet, in the midst of despair, a flicker of resolve began to grow. I was not a man to give up easily. I had faced challenges before, and I would face this one too. But first, I needed answers. I needed to find Daniel. I began reaching out to his friends and acquaintances, piecing together his recent movements. Each conversation was a thread, a small clue in a tangled web of deceit and disappearance. It became clear that Daniel was not just avoiding me, but possibly running from debts and trouble I had never known about. The realization stung sharply. My son had been hiding a life of financial recklessness beneath the surface, and I had been blind to it. The man I thought I knew was slipping further away, replaced by a stranger who had taken everything from me. Late one evening, as I sat alone in my apartment, the silence pressing in, I allowed myself a rare moment of vulnerability. The betrayal was a wound that would take time to heal, but I refused to let it destroy me. I had to be strong for myself and for whatever future lay ahead. The journey to find Daniel, to reclaim what was lost, and to confront the painful truths about my son had only just begun. But I knew, deep in my heart, that I could not face it alone. I would need help, guidance, and above all, the courage to go on. The days stretched on, each one heavier than the last, as I searched for Daniel with a growing sense of desperation. I returned to his house, hoping for some sign, some clue that would lead me to him. But the house was eerily silent, the air thick with the absence of life. The brand-new Mercedes stood out like a gleaming scar against the faded paint of the old neighborhood. Its polished surface reflected the sky, mocking me with its cold perfection. I knocked on the door again and again, but no one answered. The windows revealed a scene frozen in time. A half-empty bottle of whiskey on the kitchen counter, a jacket draped over a chair, a scattered stack of mail unopened on the table. It was as if Daniel had simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind the trappings of a life he no longer cared about. I paced the driveway, my mind racing with questions and fears. Where had he gone? Why had he taken the money? The weight of his betrayal pressed down on me like a physical force, crushing my hope and filling me with a profound loneliness. Finally, after days of silence, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Daniel's name. My heart leapt, and I fumbled to answer, my voice trembling. "Daniel, where have you been? Why did you take my money without telling me?" His voice on the other end was cold, distant, and laced with frustration. "Dad, I'm tired of this conversation. You never understood what I was going through. I needed that money to support my family. You always think it's about you." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had spent years supporting him, sacrificing my own comfort to give him a better life, and now he accused me of selfishness. "Support your family?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "You didn't ask me. You took everything without a word. How am I supposed to live now?" Daniel's tone hardened. "Maybe if you had been there when we needed you, this wouldn't have happened. I'm doing what I have to do. Don't expect me to explain or apologize." The call ended abruptly, leaving me in a silence that was more suffocating than any words could be. I sat down on the edge of the couch, the weight of his rejection settling deep inside me. The son I had raised, the boy I had loved unconditionally, was now a stranger who refused to take responsibility. In the following days, I tried reaching out again, but Daniel's calls went unanswered. His messages were terse and infrequent, each one a reminder of the growing chasm between us. His refusal to acknowledge my pain deepened my wounds, and I found myself sinking into a despair I hadn't known possible. I visited his neighbors, hoping for any information. They spoke in hushed tones about how Daniel had been distant lately, often leaving early and returning late. There were rumors of debts and unpaid bills, whispers of trouble that Daniel had been hiding from everyone. The shiny car, they said, was just a facade masking deeper problems. One neighbor mentioned seeing Daniel packing bags hastily a week before the money disappeared, as if preparing to leave town. The thought struck me with a cold finality. My son was not just avoiding me. He was running away, leaving behind a trail of broken promises. I felt lost, betrayed not only by Daniel's actions, but by the realization that I had failed to see the signs. How had I missed the pain and struggle that must have driven him to this? The guilt gnawed at me, mingling with the anger and heartbreak. Determined to confront this painful truth, I returned to his house once more. The silence inside was oppressive, each room echoing with memories of better times. I sat on the worn sofa, the fabric frayed beneath me, and let the tears come. The man who had once been my son was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. I found a scrap of paper tucked under a lamp. A hastily written note, barely legible. "I'm sorry, Dad. I can't fix this now. Please understand." The words were a fragile thread linking me to the son I loved, but also a reminder of the distance that now separated us. As I left the house, the evening sky darkened, mirroring the storm inside me. I felt a cold emptiness, a loss that went beyond money or possessions. This was the loss of trust, of family, of hope. Back in my apartment, the walls seemed to close in. Each room echoed with the silence left by Daniel's absence. I sat at the kitchen table, the note clutched in my hand, and wondered how to heal a wound so deep. The confrontation, such as it was, had left me more broken than before. Daniel's refusal to take responsibility, his blame, and his disappearance had shattered any illusions I had left. I was alone, abandoned by the son I had raised. Yet, amidst the darkness, a small flame of resolve flickered. I cannot let this betrayal define me. I needed to find a way to face Daniel, to hold him accountable, and to reclaim some measure of control over the chaos he had unleashed. I began making plans, reaching out to old friends and family members who might have insights or connections. I sought advice on legal options, hoping to understand how I could protect what little remained of my life from further devastation. Each step was painful, each conversation a reminder of the distance between me and the son I once knew. But I pressed on, driven by a stubborn hope that somewhere beneath the anger and betrayal, the boy I loved was still there. The journey ahead was uncertain and fraught with hardship, but I was determined to face it. Daniel's actions had left a wound too deep to ignore, but I would find a way to endure, to confront the pain, and to seek the truth, no matter where it led. Determined not to be left in the dark any longer, I resolved to dig deeper into Daniel's recent activities. I needed to understand what had driven him to such desperate measures and, more importantly, where he might be now. The betrayal still stung, but beneath it was a flicker of paternal concern, a hope that he wasn't lost beyond reach. I began by reaching out to people who might have had contact with him recently, friends, colleagues, even acquaintances I barely knew. Each phone call was a cautious step into a world I no longer recognized, a world where my son had become a stranger tangled in debts and secrets. One of Daniel's old friends, Mark, answered my call hesitantly. His voice was low and guarded, but after some coaxing, he admitted that Daniel had been under a lot of pressure lately. He's been juggling a lot, bills, debts, some bad decisions. He wasn't the same guy I knew, Mark said. Last I heard, he was trying to keep things afloat, but it wasn't working. Mark's words confirmed the fears I had been trying to suppress. Daniel wasn't just avoiding me. He was drowning in problems I hadn't seen, problems he wasn't ready to face. I asked if he knew where Daniel might be now, but Mark shrugged helplessly. He's been keeping a low profile, moving around. I don't think he wants to be found. I made a list of places Daniel used to frequent, local hangouts, his workplace, even to mechanics where he took the Mercedes for servicing. At each location, I asked about him, piecing together a patchwork of information that was frustratingly incomplete. Some places hadn't seen him in weeks. Others reported missed payments and mounting debts. At one auto repair shop, the owner told me that Daniel had left a trail of unpaid bills, always promising to settle them soon. It was clear that the brand-new car was a burden he could no longer bear, a symbol of a life spiraling out of control. As I gathered these fragments, a pattern emerged. Daniel had been avoiding creditors, hiding from the consequences of his choices. The man I remembered, the son I loved, was trapped in a web of financial distress and fear. I also discovered that Daniel had been using multiple phone numbers and addresses in recent months, complicating my search. It was as if he was deliberately erasing his tracks, trying to disappear from the world that demanded accountability. The more I learned, the heavier the weight on my shoulders became. The betrayal was no longer just about the money. It was about a son I feared was losing himself in a maze of troubles I had failed to see. In the evenings, I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by notes and phone records, trying to connect the dots. Each conversation, each lead was a small victory, but the overall picture remained bleak. Daniel was entangled in debts, possibly running from creditors and hiding from me. Despite the pain, I knew I had to keep going. I couldn't let despair take hold. The more I understood, the better equipped I would be to find him and, hopefully, help him confront the mess he had created. One afternoon, I received a tip from a distant cousin who mentioned seeing Daniel at a local community center a few days earlier. It was a faint glimmer of hope, but enough to spur me into action. I went there immediately, asking staff and visitors if they had seen him. A kind woman remembered him, a man looking tired and weary, often alone. She said Daniel had been attending some financial counseling sessions, trying to get his life back on track. The news was a balm to my aching heart, proof that he hadn't given up entirely. But the path ahead was still uncertain. Daniel's attempts to rebuild were fragile, and I could sense the walls he had built around himself. He was scared, ashamed, and distant, emotions that kept him from reaching out to me. I realized that to bridge the gap between us, I would need more than just information. I would need patience, understanding, and perhaps the help of others who could support both of us through this difficult time. In the meantime, I continued to collect evidence, bank statements, phone records, witness accounts, building a picture of Daniel's recent life. It was a painful process, but necessary if I wanted to hold him accountable and protect myself from further harm. Late at night, I reviewed the files, the names and numbers blurring together in the dim light. The mortgage company, the credit card companies, the loan sharks, all were part of the tangled web Daniel had woven. It was overwhelming, but I refused to turn away. I also contacted a private investigator, hoping to gain some professional assistance in tracking Daniel's movements. The investigator's report confirmed much of what I had already discovered. Daniel was on the move, avoiding certain areas, and living under aliases at times. With this knowledge, I felt a mixture of frustration and determination. The road ahead was steep, but I was not ready to give up. My son had made his mistakes, but I believed there was still a chance to reach him, to confront the truth, and to begin the long process of healing. Each day, I balanced on the edge of hope and despair, driven by a father's love and the painful lessons of betrayal. The search for Daniel was more than a quest for answers. It was a fight to reclaim a broken bond and to find some semblance of justice in the wreckage he had left behind. As I prepared to make another call, another visit, I steeled myself for whatever lay ahead. The path was uncertain, but I was resolved to see it through, no matter the cost. The son I knew, the son I loved, was out there somewhere, and I would find him. The weight of uncertainty pressed in on me like a suffocating fog, but I knew I couldn't face this alone. I needed guidance, someone who could help me navigate the tangled web Daniel had left behind. With a sense of urgency, I reached out to a legal advisor recommended by a friend who had faced similar family issues. The meeting was daunting. Sitting across from a stranger and laying bare the details of my son's betrayal felt like exposing wounds I wasn't ready to confront. But I understood that knowledge was power, and I needed to know my options. The lawyer listened patiently as I detailed the liquidation of my retirement fund, Daniel's disappearance, and the mounting debts tied to his name. She explained the complexities of financial abuse within families and the legal avenues available to me. There was talk of filing for restitution, freezing assets, and possibly pursuing criminal charges for identity theft and fraud. Though the process sounded lengthy and exhausting, it was a lifeline, a way to reclaim some control over the chaos inflicted on my life. At the same time, I sought solace and advice from a local support group for victims of family fraud. The group met weekly in a small community center, a place where broken stories were shared and fragile hope was nurtured. Sitting among strangers who understood the unique pain of betrayal within one's own bloodline was unexpectedly comforting. Their stories mirrored my own in heartbreaking ways. Sons, daughters, siblings who had stolen, lied, and vanished, leaving devastation in their wake. One woman, Susan, shared how she had been defrauded by her brother, losing her life savings to his gambling debts. Her voice trembled as she recounted the financial and emotional toll, but beneath the sorrow was a fierce determination to rebuild. Her courage inspired me. I realized I was not alone, and that together we could find strength to face the aftermath of such betrayals. Despite the support, my personal situation worsened. The loss of my retirement fund meant I could no longer keep up with my modest rent. Notices from the landlord began arriving, reminders of bills I could no longer pay. The fear of losing my home settled over me like a dark cloud. One evening, a formal eviction notice was slipped under my door. The reality hit hard. I was on the brink of homelessness. I packed a small bag, feeling the sting of humiliation as I prepared to leave the apartment that had been my sanctuary for years. With nowhere else to turn, I found refuge in a local community shelter. The starkness of the shelter, the unfamiliar faces, and the loss of privacy were jarring contrasts to the life I had known. Yet, even in that desolation, I found moments of kindness, a shared meal, a warm blanket, a sympathetic ear. Living in the shelter was a humbling experience, but it also steeled my resolve. I refused to let Daniel's betrayal define my future. Each day, I attended support group meetings, met with legal advisors, and continued my search for Daniel. I reached out to friends and family, seeking any connection that might lead me to him, or at least provide answers. The emotional toll was immense. I battled waves of anger, sorrow, and confusion. Some days, the weight felt unbearable. But amid the hardship, I began to see a new purpose emerging. I was becoming an advocate, not just for myself, but for others caught in the silent epidemic of family fraud. I started volunteering at the support group, sharing my story with newcomers, offering the empathy that only someone who had walked the same painful path could provide. It was a way to reclaim some dignity, to transform my pain into something meaningful. Through this work, I connected with lawyers, counselors, and community leaders who were passionate about protecting vulnerable elders from financial abuse. Meanwhile, my efforts to find Daniel continued. I hired a private investigator recommended by the lawyer, hoping professional expertise would uncover leads beyond my reach. The investigator uncovered traces of Daniel's movements, short stays in different cities, sporadic employment, and continued financial troubles. It was clear he was struggling, but also that he was deliberately keeping his distance. I wrestled with conflicting emotions, anger at his betrayal, concern for his well-being, and a deep, aching longing for reconciliation. The support group helped me process these feelings, reminding me that forgiveness was a journey, not an obligation. One afternoon, the lawyer called with news of a potential legal avenue to freeze some of Daniel's remaining assets. It wasn't much, but it was a step towards preventing further loss. We began preparing the necessary paperwork, gathering evidence of unauthorized transactions and fraudulent activity. In parallel, I worked on rebuilding my own life. I enrolled in community courses to develop new skills, hoping to improve my prospects despite my age. The shelter provided resources, and the support group offered encouragement. Each small victory was a balm to my battered spirit. Yet, there were moments of raw vulnerability. Late at night, I would sit alone, the weight of the past pressing down, questioning if I would ever see my son again or recover what was lost. The uncertainty was a constant companion, but so was my determination. I knew the road ahead was long, fraught with legal battles, emotional healing, and possibly more pain. But I also understood that surrender was not an option. My journey had transformed from seeking restitution to seeking understanding, closure, and perhaps, one day, forgiveness. Through the darkest days, I clung to the hope that by facing these challenges head-on, I could reclaim not only my financial security, but also my dignity and peace of mind. The betrayal had shattered my world, but it had also revealed a resilience I never knew I possessed. As I prepared for the next meeting with my lawyer, ready to take the next legal steps, I felt a quiet strength growing within me. The past could not be changed, but the future was still unwritten, and I was determined to write my own story, one step at a time. After months of relentless searching, a breakthrough came unexpectedly. A distant relative, someone I had only recently reached out to, called with a tip about Daniel's whereabouts. He had been spotted in a small town several hours away, living under a different name, trying to keep a low profile. The news reignited a spark of hope within me, a chance to finally confront the son who had shattered my world. With the help of the private investigator and local authorities, we coordinated a plan to locate Daniel and bring him into a legal process that would address the financial damage and, hopefully, begin the healing between us. The authorities were cautious but sympathetic, recognizing the complexity of family betrayal intertwined with financial fraud. The day we found Daniel was tense and emotional. He appeared worn and gaunt, a shadow of the man I once knew. When I saw him, my heart ached with a mix of sorrow, anger, and a desperate longing for reconciliation. The confrontation was painful. Daniel was defensive, fearful, and ashamed, but beneath the surface, there was a flicker of remorse. Legal proceedings followed swiftly. With the comprehensive evidence I had painstakingly gathered, the bank statements, transaction records, witness testimonies, the case against Daniel was strong. Charges of identity theft, fraud, and financial abuse were filed. Throughout the process, I remained firm, determined to see justice served, not out of vengeance, but to protect myself and others from similar betrayals. Daniel pleaded guilty. In court, he expressed regret, acknowledging the pain he caused, though the damage was already done. The judge sentenced him to probation, community service, and mandated full restitution to all his victims, including me. It was a bittersweet victory. Justice served, but the scars remained. Leaving the courthouse that day, I felt a complex mixture of relief and sorrow. The legal battle was over, but the emotional wounds ran deep. Daniel would have to rebuild his life from the ground up, facing the consequences of his actions, while I began the slow process of rebuilding mine. In the months that followed, I used my experience to become an advocate for others facing elder financial abuse. I share my story at community centers, support groups, and even local media, raising awareness about the hidden epidemic of family fraud. My journey from victim to advocate gave me a new sense of purpose, a way to transform pain into progress. I connected with organizations specializing in protecting vulnerable seniors, helping to develop educational programs and resources to prevent others from suffering what I had endured. Through this work, I found a sense of healing and empowerment, reclaiming my dignity and voice. Rebuilding my life was not easy. Financially, I faced challenges, but the restitution ordered by the court helped stabilize my situation. More importantly, I found strength in the community I had built, friends, advocates, and survivors who understood the unique pain of betrayal by loved ones. The relationship with Daniel remained fractured, a delicate and painful reality. Forgiveness was a distant goal, and trust, once shattered, was difficult to repair. Yet, I held on to the hope that time, honesty, and accountability might one day bridge the gap. Returning to my modest apartment, I reflected on the journey, from the shock of betrayal to the fight for justice and the quest for healing. I had been broken, but not defeated. The path ahead was uncertain, but I faced it with a quiet resilience born of hard-earned wisdom. Trust, I learned, once broken, could never be fully restored, but justice, when pursued with determination and clarity, could bring a measure of peace. And with that peace, I began to rebuild not just my life, but my spirit. If you love the story, like the video and subscribe.